Hello everyone, this is Sir Rhino coming at you with my very first Eternal Draft that I get to record. The NDA is finally lifted, and I finally get to share this wonderful game with all of you. I'm sure plenty of viewers are already in the closed beta, but maybe some of you just got in. Maybe the open beta is finally here and you're just watching an intro video for the first time, which is what I'm going to try and make this initial draft video be. I'm going to try and explain every card in depth, go over a lot of mechanics. So this draft is going to probably be quite a bit longer than my draft videos will be in the future. I'm going to try and be as comprehensive and informative as possible for this draft. Quick rundown of who I am. I've been playing card and strategy games for most of my life, like about the past 20 years. I've been a big fan of Magic the Gathering and all other sorts of games, and I've been in the Eternal Beta since very early June. Um, so I have quite a bit of an experience drafting this set already. I've hit Master rank in both of the seasons that have been there so far. Not Master in this one yet, as just reset, and I had quite a busy weekend. I was somewhat busy winning the July Scions League tournament as well. That was very fun and fortunate thing to happen for me. But without further ado, let's get this draft started, and I'll just keep rambling on about what's going on here. So here's our first pack. For those that have never drafted before, basically what we're doing here is we're going to be going through 4 packs of 12 cards, picking a card each time, and building a deck out of it. So the cards are going to show up over here. So there's lots of methods in terms of what is good drafting, essentially. And I'll go over that as we go through these packs. The other question that gets asked a lot is, where do these packs come from? And the answer to that's kind of complicated. This is Asynchronous Draft. So the packs essentially, as you can tell, there's no timer. It's not timed in any way. I could close this window like this, and if I go to draft, the pack will still be here. The way this works is essentially that I'm opening this pack, I'm going to pick a card and pass it off into the ether, or I guess some database in Colorado that Direwolf Digital owns. And for every pick I make, that next pack will also join that, and eventually somebody will get that stack of picks to them. So every pack I'm going to see has been picked by essentially the same person at some point. There'll be some signaling to see as far as what colors they're taking, but it's not super strong signaling, but there is some. And then as far as that happens for packs 1 and 3, you receive the same batch essentially from that direction. And packs 2 and 4 come from a different person. I believe Direwolf Digital developers have mentioned that they try and have both directions sync up as much as possible, but there's still plenty of kinks to be worked out. So let's actually get to the picks in this pack. And this pack is not a very strong one. There's not a whole lot going on here. This is really weak. All of our rares and uncommons are multicolored, which is not really where I want to start a draft unless they're very powerful. And none of these really fit that bill either. Like Ferocious Stranger, 4/4 double damage is fine. Giving your strangers double damage, fine, but not really where I want to be on the first pick. Runic Revolver, same thing. 2 damage on a quick draw weapon is actually very nice. Like you can take out a few creatures with it sometimes before it goes away, but still you're investing 5 power for it, and the summon effect is honestly not a big deal. Haunting Scream is something you can go, it's either incredibly good or terrible. And in a first picking it out of this pack actually almost makes sense in that regard, where maybe I end up in the Feln Haunting Scream deck and really get there. For those not familiar with this card, leave it up here for a second. It lets you play a unit with cost 4 or less from the void. It gets charge and flying, sacrifice it at end of turn. So essentially what you want to do is cast this targeting a high value infiltrate creature. most commonly, I think, in Constructed is Gorgon Fanatic, which when it deals damage to an opponent for the first time, it draws you 3 cards, which is huge. But there's lots of other value targets for it. What else is in this pack? Ornate Katana's fine. It's just filler, draws a card, and makes one of your minions that have been outclassed slightly stronger. New Stranger's not very good at all. Blackguard's Sidearm is fine. I would say drawing a card slightly better than Quick Draw. I'd rather have the replacement. Nomad Healer I try to never play if I can. I mean, a 1-3 for 3 with incidental healing is fine. Violent Gust is also in the fine camp. I would certainly rate it as better than, say, a Nomad Healer or Mr. Yeti Spy here, because in draft, you can live and die by flyers quite often. So I'm usually not unhappy to have at least one of these in my deck, but it's certainly not something I want to pick first. Yeti Spy is not a card I'm very happy to play. A 1-1 for 1 is just not a very high impact card. Sure, it might draw you a card sometimes, but that's only if you're like on the play, going first, have it turn 1, and it hits, and congratulations, you did 1 damage and drew a card. It's not that exciting. Valkyrie Aspirant is a bit more of an exciting 1-1 for 1. It's kind of funny that these are all 1-1s here. In that it has flying, so it's got evasion, so usually what will happen is, early game if you play it, it pecks in a few times. Maybe you put some sort of attachment on it, or weapon, I suppose. Weapon's a subclass of attachment, and it really hits them hard. So it's a nice little aggressive card that happens to be, if you draw it really late in the game, you can pay 8 and make it a huge flyer. So it's okay early, but honestly not that great. Like a 1-1 flyer for once. Not the best thing in the world. But a 5-5 flyer late in the game, that kind of flexibility is very nice. Ruthless Stranger's fine. 2-1 for 1 essentially. It's giving all strangers in play, including your opponents, +1 power, or whatever the term is in this game, because I guess power is the top left, so strength. Let's call it strength. +1 strength. So all the strangers in play will have 2 strength, essentially. New Stranger, Echo's a really sweet mechanic, but not on a 1-1 for 2. I'd want something bigger before I'm happy about having a cool card with Echo. So let's go with Haunting Scream. This is total speculation. I'm not going to be committed to a Haunting Scream deck. It just, I guess, has the most upside. I can't even really say that. Something like Ruthless Stranger honestly might. But Haunting Scream's fun. I enjoy Feln. Let's take it. And, okay, this pack is a lot better. Senzari Brigand is great. It can really steal wins out of nowhere as far as your opponent just not expecting a 2-2 charge, especially if you have War Cries going on in your deck and it ends up being a 3-3 or a 4-4 that's suddenly 8 damage coming at them that they don't expect just because of that double damage to players. So that's a pretty exciting card that I'm a fan of. False Prince, which, is also shiny. It's fun. Really awesome card. Very, very high commitment, though, in terms of influence. Double time and primal. But you get a 5-5 Overwhelm for 3, which is just absurdly far ahead of curve. It's really hard to deal with in terms of having creatures match up with it. Now, it dies almost any spell, but, so do most 3-drops, so it's not the biggest downside in the world. Sometimes it's a little annoying that you can't use your own tricks on it, but in time primal that doesn't happen too often other than, say, Levitate. So it's not the biggest drawback. Armor Smith, great in Constructed, not so great in Draft. It's really just going to be a 2-2 for 4 that gives you a little bit of bonus health. Not a big fan of Ornamental Daggers, mostly because when you're in time, your units are already fairly large. But there's some Combre lists that want it. Levitate's a fine utility card, but not something I want to pick early. Ethri Ranger is great. It's a 2-2 for 2, which is totally fine, and it has the great upside of becoming a 4-4 if it hits. The other really cool thing with Infiltrate is it does something the first time it damages a player, but say it dies and then you bring it back with, say, a Haunting Scream or Dark Return. then you can infiltrate again. Now, Haunting Scream, not that good with Lethrai Ranger. Okay, you get in for 4, maybe it becomes a 6/6, and then it dies. Nobody really cares, but still, it's a solid card that goes with our first pick, so I'm not unhappy. Direfang Spider, also totally fine. Like Ranger more, just because it can play better offense. More of a defensive card where it just kind of holds down the ground and is almost a shifting removal spell where whatever their big guy is that they're concerned about won't be able to attack until they deal with this spider or give it flying, for instance. Which is kind of its drawback, is that it's not always going to be the deterrent you want it to be, and it's not that great on offense. But still, a fine card. Combrei Banner, I love banners, I like fixing, but I'm not taking it here over some very, very good cards. Blackguard Sidearm, we already saw that before, it's fine. Not a fan at all of Centaur Outrider, it just dies to everything and costs 4. So that's a filler card that I'd try to avoid playing. Same with Daze. Stunning is good, but just not something I'm looking for here. This is interesting. Is this card strong enough that we just want to play it safe and stick with it? Or do we take one of these cards that's arguably more powerful, but also, you know, not lining up with this first pick? And it's also a question of how much stronger are these than this. And that's an interesting question. I'm a big fan of just trying to stick to Shadow in draft. That's generally where I've had my most success. Although I have my fair share of success with Fire as well. Time Elysian is Time Primal combo. That can be pretty tough to get going, but False Prince is the key card to having a very good Elysian deck, so picking it's reasonable. Plus it's, and that is shiny and beautiful. Really, really tough for me to resist something so pretty, but I'm gonna be disciplined here and take the Ranger, but I might end up regretting it, that's for sure. But hey, it's fine. Alright. So, so we've got an Oblivion Spike. I like this card a lot. Even if on average it ends up being, say, only 2 creatures are in your graveyard when you, or in your void when you draw it. 2/5 weapon for 5 is not the end of the world. It's when you draw it really late in a game and it's 6/5 that it gets really insane and can usually take out multiple units. And it's just very, very nice. Fearless Nomad's fine. It's kind of deceiving because it's like, oh, 1 power, so I can play it on turn 1. But that rarely is ever going to happen in draft. It's almost impossible. Rakano banners are almost always going to be depleted turn 1. So, yeah, he's more of a tempo play on a later turn. So you get to deploy multiple things. And you happen to play 3/1 Overwhelm, which is totally fine. Clever Stranger's cool, but sometimes your opponent will have more strangers, so you want to make sure you're taking advantage of it. Argent Port Soldiers is a fine 3/2 for 2, totally nice. Loyal Watchwings got Evasion and Warcry. Warcry is a really cool mechanic in that every time that unit attacks, the top thing of your deck gets +1/+1. So it kind of lets you snowball, where once you start attacking, you can almost keep attacking. Also affects weapons, so it makes the weapons on top bigger. You put it on your Warcry guy, and it keeps making the rest of the stuff bigger because your Warcry guy can keep attacking. Problem with the Warcry deck is when it doesn't get ahead, it's not doing a whole lot. So there is a downside, but the deck can get a lot of free wins. Obsidian Golem's really nice. It's a 2/2 for 2 that when it dies gives you a weapon that gives +2/+2 for 2. So you're okay with sacrificing it or throwing it in as a block somewhere because you're going to get some more value out of it afterward. I'm a big fan of Ravenous Thornbeast as well. Worst case scenario, 3/3 for 3. That's fine. Its upside is awesome. You can make it a 5/5 by sacrificing something like an Obsidian Golem. And then one of my favorite little synergies that common is to Dark Return it later, so it comes back to your hand as a 6/6 and then sacrifice something else, and now it's an 8/8, and it's just huge and great. Wisdom of the Elders, draw 2 cards for 3. There's nothing wrong with that. Card advantage is nice. Peacekeeper's alright. The body is very sad, but in more like Combrei style decks where you're lacking removal, he can do well in a pinch. And then Grunt also has Warcry. I like it a lot more than Watchwing. Sure, it doesn't have evasion, but the three toughness is something, or 3 health, right? Yeah, it's called health in this game, is certainly something, and it just costs 1 less, which means you can start war crying sooner. That being said, taking Oblivion Spike. So yeah, as you can see, I'm going to be going through these packs pretty slowly. I would not be shocked if this draft ends up being an hour. I just want to really go in depth about pretty much every card. I want this to be a good tool for new players. So if you've been playing this game for a while, I'm sorry, this might not be the video for you, but I'm still hoping there's something for everybody to learn in this as I comment through these. Wow, this pack does not really go with what we've been doing at all. There's a bunch of time cards, although Water of Life and Dispel aren't cards that I consider that great. Healer's Cloak is okay. Predator's Instinct gives a unit killer, so if you have the biggest unit on the board, it's good. The problem is when you don't, it's a bit worse. So I don't mind having one in some of my time decks. Like I said, time creatures generally run larger, so it's a fine card, but not something I'm crazy about. We see no primal cards and no shadow cards, which, sometimes happens. Who knows what the 3 missing cards were? We've got a missing uncommon, a rare, and a common, so it could be, just no shadow cards were even opened. Yeah, who knows? It's a tough call. So the question is, what do we take? Don't mind Granite Acolyte if we're trying to stick towards the shadow with a 3rd pick Oblivion Spike. I think Granite Acolyte might go best with that, just because that leaves us open to Scarstone. Is that like the name of the? It was called Velforge, but they just changed the name of it in the last patch. So that faction, the Fire Shadow faction, has gold cards, as we saw. There was the Obsidian Golem in the last pack. So taking this leaves us open to that archetype, which I'm a big fan of. Just Granite Acolyte's not that great of a card. It's fine. It's not that great. That being said, there's not much else that's really arguably even better than it. Rhino Stranger's fine. I like fixing Stranger, sure. Healer's Cloak, also just whatever. I mean, you can get +2/+2 for 2 out of Crown Watch Longsword. This is just adding some life gain, which is good, but not something I'm going to be super excited about. Valorous Stranger has Warcry, gives your Strangers Warcry. So if you have, say, a turn 2 Rhino Stranger and play turn 3 Valorous Stranger, this Rhino Stranger can swing with Warcry that turn. So it has pseudo haste Warcry in some pseudo charge Warcry. But man, these packs have been making me sad. I'm just gonna go with Granite Acolyte. I like all of the Acolytes, honestly. Smud might not be the strongest of them, and this time signal, it may be a signal, but it might just be a time heavy pack. Like none of these time cards are. This whole pack's kind of weak. We'll just take the Granite Acolyte. Speaking of Acolytes, big fan of Cobalt Acolyte. Might be the best of the Acolyte cycle. Giving a unit flying is great. Works really well with Infiltrate. Super happy. It's fine to Haunting Scream it back a turn and give something else flying. All fine options. Whip Chain is a controversial one. It gives a unit +2/+2, so obviously that for 5 is not great, but gives it killer, so you're making a thing bigger and then it can kill something. Problem with that is you can get blown out hard if they have any kind of trick to pump their creature. If they have a removal spell, they can use it in response to your guy getting killer. So you gotta have to really carefully pick your spot with it. But it can be fine. Here's the +2/+2 for 2 I was talking about. Crown Watch Longsword. It's also fine. Devour, typically filler, where, it's nice if they try and remove your dude and just in response say, I drew 2 cards. But it's not really creating any card advantage. It's just kind of sifting. So it's fine. There's certain decks where if you get Madness combos, it gets better. Creatures you really want to sacrifice, sure. Lets us put a creature in the bin that we want to get through for Scream. But it's nothing I'm going crazy about. So I think Orc Bailiff's also fine. I think I'm looking between Whip Chain and an Acolyte. And probably just gonna stick to on color. Just try and stick to shadow. Whip chain can be fine. Ah, alright, here we go. Grasping at Shadows just lets you play a unit. It says from the void, but it's really only your void. You can't play it from your opponent's void. I hope they change that wording at some point, because I think clarity would help. Argent Port Soldiers, fine. Direfang's Spider, also fine. Hellfire Rifle, not so fine. Protect is a nice trick. It doesn't really make your creature any bigger, so it doesn't help as a combat trick, but it protects, obviously, it's called Protect, from removal spell. So it's very useful in, say, Rakano, where you're putting a bunch of weapons on one creature and you don't want to get, say, 3 for 1 and blown out by a removal spell. It can be very useful. But I'm going to take Mr. Stone Scar Magus here. Very, very big fan of this guy. Can often be a complete brick wall, as he can just hold off the ground. Even if their entire ground force is bigger than him, they might not want to swing because he'll end up picking off a small flyer in the air. I've also joked that this guy has the hidden text of unblockable. A lot of times there'll be board states where he can swing freely and they don't want to block, because anything they block with he will kill and end up killing something else. It's a very versatile card. It's fine to target to devour or sacrifice. A 2/2 for 4 is nothing you really care about, but that Entomb effect is powerful. It can turn Haunting Scream into removal. It's just a great, versatile, flexible, awesome card. Very happy to see there. So there is a shadow card in the back, Sabotage, which if you're familiar with my constructed decks, know I play as a 4 of very, very, very often. I love it in constructed. In draft, it's not quite as appealing. There's a high chance it whiffs or takes something low impact. It's still fine, but Finest Hour is a much better card. Finest Hour is best combat trick of the game. Giving a unit +3/+3 is awesome. Doesn't technically pair that well with Shadow. Argent Port isn't a faction that has gold cards yet in this draft format. So if you end up drafting Justice with Shadow, you're just drafting Justice and Shadow cards and hoping to end up with a good stuff deck. And then the rest of these cards are just filler, whatever. Decay's fine, Behemoth's fine. We have been seeing a lot of time cards, but that's still not really a signal, just because time is maybe the worst faction in draft. There's still some debate out there about that. If it is, it's not that much worse, but just keep seeing, like, Water of Life just isn't a card you ever want to play. It has no impact on the board, just doesn't do anything. Gaining 6 life isn't going to help you win any game. So it's really between Sabotage and Finest Hour. And I think Finest Hour is enough better than Sabotage that I should just take it here. Ultimately, draft is still about the creatures. The fact that this can also hit attachments, though, it's tempting. It's not a great top deck. You know what? I want to test it out and stick with Shadow. I'm just going to take it, see where we go. Well, some Justice stuff here, though. Reinforcement doesn't count. It's just not a card. Don't ever play this card, ever. Just don't. Traveling Camel, let you dirtle. It's fine. Daze is whatever. Amethyst Acolyte is definitely the worst of the Acolytes. It's just pretty low impact. Draining 2 is fine. Sometimes you can do some fun shenanigans with Scream, I guess. But I guess I am taking it out of this pack. I mean, Crowdwatch Longsword's okay, but it's nothing to be excited about. Man, these packs have just not been that great. Okay, Merciless Strangers, actually. So it's Civic Peacekeeper, but I'm just going to stay open. Alchemical Blast is totally fine. There's an argument maybe that I want Stranger, but I've got 2 5-drops that are already acceptable, and I'm not that interested in trying out Xenon. And none of these cards are any good. This is what I was talking about earlier. 1/1 flyers for 1 are just mediocre. Sky, same thing, just a 1/1 for 1 with marginal upside, just not where you want to be. You want to have all of your cards should at least have some sort of impact in draft, and this just doesn't have an impact. So we'll take Herald's Song. Lets us filter. We haven't really seen much Primal this pack, so I don't think we're going to end up Felm, but hey, whatever. And a second Sabotage, sure. And hey, there's some more Primal. Oh, let's see here. Righteous Fury is an awesome little trick. It doesn't make your guy bigger, but double damage and lifesteal at fast speed can often swing games very quickly. Some other okay cards here. We've seen most of these. Torn of Spiders, I'm not a fan of. Often ends up being just a 1/1 Deadly Spider for 3. Sometimes it makes 2, whatever. Xenian Guardian Suite, I like all of the Monuments, and Cobalt's probably the best, but I'm just going to take Feeding Time. It kills the unit, and that's great. Turns it into a pig first, just for good measure. Okay, well, we've got our pick of Felon cards here, that's for sure. And there really isn't anything in any other colors. Like Rebuke's fine. Unlock Potential's slightly better than fine. Light Lieutenant is the definition of mediocre, but we've got our pick of the list. Let's see here. Eastwind Herald, super solid 2-drop, 1/3 flying. Reduce the cost of top spell of your deck by 1. It holds off the comes up early game and can get in some damage later on just with the evasion. It's nice. Dark Wisp, decent filler, something you can sacrifice to your things that require sacrifices like Devour or Thorn Beast. So it's just a nice little, it's a role player. Helps, kind of ends up being glue, but it's not an essential card. The two big cards here are Harbinger's Bite and Lightning Strike. Bite can be just absolutely insane in some games. If your opponent just starts turn 1 on your own and turn 2 some other stupid aggro dork and you just kill both of them, you win the game. Straight up. The game is over. You just 2 for 1 them, gain 2 life, and ruin them. That being said, against not aggro decks, the card is not so good. Occasionally you'll throw, they'll the Gruon or whatever will bounce off something, or you can combine it with a Stonescar Magus to actually kill something off, but you usually have to jump through hoops. For a Lightning Strike, you just have to hope they attack you, which generally an opponent will do at some point in the game, and then you kill their guy. That's a pretty good deal. Arachnodon and Direwood Rampager are both big, dumb, inefficient 6-drops that I try to avoid playing. Between these two, I like Arachnodon more. It dies to less things, and it can't be chumped like Direwood Rampager, because it has Overwhelm. Rampager just kind of dies to everything. For 6 anyway. So, like Lightning Strike, for instance. So I'm going to take Lightning Strike here. You could see an argument for Harbinger's Bite just because it does have some blowouts, but I'm a big fan of Lightning Strike. Not very happy with this pack here. Flash Freeze is solid. It's inherent card disadvantage in that it has a very temporary effect. So you have to make sure your deck can make the most of your enemy's units being stunned for a little bit, either by killing them or by getting through infiltrate effects and taking advantage of turns that your creatures can get through. Finest Hour again, awesome trick. Psionic Savant is a nice little finisher. It's not something I'm particularly interested in splashing for, which it looks like I am at this point, getting Feeding Time and Lightning Strike so far. This pack has kind of further solidified that. I think I'm just going to take the fixing here in Stonescar Banner. I'm just passing up some mediocre playables that are ultimately replaceable. Pack Alley Bouncer and Scaly Gruon. I already have one Gruon. I don't really want to. 4/3 for 4 with no other text is playable, but not something I'm jumping joy over. So I'm going to take this banner. Gives us the option of, if we see a really good Stonescar card, that we can pick it up and have a better chance of playing it in our deck without disrupting how good our power and space is. Like, say, a Combust. Do you want to go in the Combust direction or be conservative and take Scavenging Vulture? That is the question here. It's Combust versus Vulture, really. Levitate's fine as well. It helps get through infiltrate, but we legitimately have one infiltrate creature. Dying for levitates at the moment. So Vulture is nice in both Felm Tempo, where you're just trying to get on the ground early and close out the game with disruption and remove backlashes and such. Combust is just great. Right now we don't have a lot of things to kill off, but if you got a Dark Wisp flying around and you get to kill something and draw a card, it just feels great. So Combust is certainly the strongest card in this pack. Combrei Healer is close, but we're not even close to Combrei colors. Icebreaker, just don't even bother. It's just not worth trying to make it happen. You could try. I just have not even been close to this in a deck yet. I think you'd have to be Primal and Justice, actually. Justice gets a few more extra stun effects, and then Icebreaker is good. But in Felm, Shadow's not bringing any stun to the table. And in Elysian, same thing. Time doesn't bring any stun to the table. So I think it's between this Vulture and Combust. And I'm going to go with the Vulture, just be conservative. It's almost certainly going to make... but Combust certainly has a ton of upside. It could be a thing where I end up splashing just as Feeding Time and moving into... Stone Scar. Because there are some other fire cards here. And we didn't see a ton of Primal. Yeah, I'm just going to go with the upside pick. We'll see where... Alright, we see an Eastwind Herald, but also Ravenous Thorn Beast. Lumen Shepherd, shout out to my boy, he's great. Same with Teleport. We're seeing some decent time stuff as expected, but I'm just taking Thorn Beast. Very happy to have it here. I'm not so concerned about my curve right now that I'm going to take this 2-drop over it. Okay. So here's another fixing question. Do we take one of these decent spells, or do we take this excellent fixing? And I'm just going to take excellent fixing. It's just important to be able to cast your spells when you want to. I think we're going to be fine on playables, that I'm not going to reach for these. These might not even ultimately make up my deck or make it into it. Felm Banner is 99% likely to make it into my deck at this point. It's going to help me splash Feeding Time if I don't end up in Felm, and if I'm in Felm, it's the best card in my deck. Pretty no-brainer. Alright. So, I like Aerial Ace, but I think I'm just going to take this Dark Wisp here. If we end up playing Combust, it's nice. It's a good lead into Ravenous Thorn Beast. It's just got some utility going on, and it gives us a nice little 2-drop to do something with. Aerial Ace, it's a fine 5-drop, but we already have 2. We're not struggling for some top end right. Of course, we immediately see another Dark Wisp, but I'm going to take the Seek Power. Huge fan of Seek Power. Just fixes, it filters, it does everything I've ever wanted, and I'm a huge fan. Said I like being able to cast my spells. I don't want to cast any of these spells though, so yeah. Guess I'll take the second Gruon. I just not a fan of New Stranger. I guess it gives us extra bodies to sacrifice or something. No. Of course. None of these are cards I want to... there's no way I'm ever playing a 3rd Scaly Gruon. I almost never play a 2nd Sight, but who knows, maybe I will. Hair Trigger Stranger, not that good unless you're in Scarstone, where it can be alongside Ruthless Stranger, but we'll see. Okay. Well, this card's incredible, and I almost wish I was Xenon now, but what can you do? There's some decent options here. So, could take another Lightning Strike, but I don't think it's better than Gorgon Swiftblade. So it's really between Swiftblade and Golem, as far as where do we think our colors are going. And I'm just going to take the Swiftblade. Once this thing connects, it's essentially a 2/3 unblockable, where they have to triple block it or something, or quad block it. Thing just becomes incredibly hard to deal with when it has Deadly and Quick Draw. Plus, it's a 2/3 for 2. It just blocks tons of stuff early on. Avenue Vaulter is nice. It has some evasion. But yeah, I'm just going to take the premium 2-drop and be very happy about it. Now, this pack is very sad. I am just going to take an Eastwind Herald, and yeah, Subvert. Some people like this card, but man, when it's bad, it is bad. Sure, when it's good, but I prefer to at least have some idea of what my card's going to do. And this card, I cannot say that's the case for. First, you don't know what's in your opponent's deck, and even if you did, you have no idea what card it's still going to take out of their hand. Even if they have 2 cards in their hand, it could just take the power that's useless. It's just, ugh, yeah, no. Zindal's Gift just way too slow. If I'm playing something that costs 7, I want it to, impact the board, which this doesn't. Fine as a sideboard card in Constructed, not playing it in Draft. We're just going to take Eastwind Herald. It's a fine 2-drop, has some evasion, makes a random spell cheap. It's all cool. Haunting Scream is not particularly good right now in our deck. That being said, I don't know if I want to take a second Seek Power over it. I certainly don't want this Hair Trigger Stranger. I perhaps want this Violent Gust. So it's between these 3 cards. The rest we can effectively... Man, this deck is not very good. Oh well, sometimes drafts are hard to navigate, We'll see where it goes. Hopefully the last pack bails us out, or the rest of this pack bails us out. Not pretty right now. God, Haunting Scream is not very good right now. Seek Power opens up a lot of possibilities in future packs as far as just randomly splashing a really nice bomb. But I'm just going to take Scream and hope we get something that helps with it. Jeez. Wow. That's a Vodakhan Staff. We are not even close to being able to do something like that. Looks like we're just going to take Feln Stranger and really wish we somehow ended up in Combray. Man. Oh, God. This is painful. My God. Vodakhan Staff is just so insanely good. Shame. So here's a question of fixing, or at least some sort of playable, and yeah, I'm going to take the good fly. Hey, alright, maybe we'll get into some sort of flying swarm strategy here. Bright Mace Paladin's awesome. Huge fan of it, would love to play it. Also, this is like the 4th finest hour we've passed, but what can you do? So, am I going to play this Torrent of Spiders? I don't think so. I don't see how it's really, on average, better than like a Scaly Gruon. I'll take this Legion banner. Maybe we splash some Legion card. Jeez, this is brutal. We'll take the premium card. Yeah. Man. Hurts. Oh boy. This last pack really needs to bail us out, or we need to get real lucky during our games. None of these are cards. We'll take this one. Sure, Rakdodon might actually end up in our deck. Okay, this counts as kind of bailing us out. There's a lot of good cards here. Avalanche Stalker with his new 2/5 stats instead of 3/4 is pretty cool. Dark Return. Love Dark Return. Really good in our deck. Second Swiftblade would be awesome, but we're not really hurting for 2s. Lethrai Falchion. This card is good. We have a bunch of flyers. We've got stuff that even on the ground, if our Golden Swiftblade has Deadly, Quick Draw, Overwhelm, Lifesteal, guess what? Nothing's stopping it short of really good removal spells. But yeah, I mean, Lifesteal is so good in Draft. It's almost impossible to overstate how good Lifesteal is. So I am going to take Lethrai Falchion. We draw it every game, and then it carries us to victory. Okay, we're getting there. Second feeding time I'm very happy to have. Desperado, though, is very good with 2 Haunting Screams. Essentially, it's really hard to get Desperado through the first time. But once it's in my void, and I can give it flying and charge, it's going to start killing more things. So this is a question of, do I take this huge card with huge upside that makes these 2 Haunting Screams almost playable by itself? Or do I take this card that I just know what it's going to do? It's going to kill something every time I play it. No questions asked. And for me, I'm going to go with the consistency. Desperado, sure, it's going to make probably cooler stories. There aren't many stories that are like, and then I feeding timed him, where a really cool story would be like, and then I haunting screwed my Desperado, and it was badass. But we're just going to go with feeding time, turn things into pigs, and be happy about it. Alright, sure. Avalanche Stalker. Double Primal's a little scary, but we picked up a lot of fixing. I think it'll be fine. Sad to pass Miss Karmic Guardian here. As I said before, Lifesteal's awesome. This just also happens to be flying and has endurance. The card's just great. Throw any kind of equipment on it, and you've won Spirit Train. If I'm going to play removal spell for 6, I'd like to know it's actually killing something. This just doesn't guarantee that. I don't mind taking Blood Beetle here. The card's not great. If you play it and your opponent just plays a bunch of 2/2s, the card's never doing anything. But sometimes you'll be going first, and you get to swing in with it, and then you have a 2/2 flyer, and you're happy. So, we'll take it, see what happens. Ooh. Okay. So here's a question of, do we want a Ravenous Thorn Beast? Wisdom of the Elders. So do we want... Is this the kind of deck that wants card draw? We just want a second Thorn Beast to kind of give us some meat in the game. Certainly would replace either Acolytes or Gruons, and we're kind of... Now we've got is a Snapper. I have a lot of things to sacrifice right now, so I'm a little concerned about that. So I'm just going to take this card draw and hope that's correct. It certainly could be wrong. It's there's an argument for taking Thorns there. So now it's a question of Devour or Gust. I just got done saying how we don't have many great things to sacrifice. And we're on kind of this theme of hopefully beating them down in the skies with a couple of these flyers. I could really use some more flyers, but right now that's all we have. And Violent Gust helps keep the skies clean. Shamanic Trance, unplayable. Don't play it in draft. I just wanted to get that out there. Sure. Another dorky flyer that gums up the early game and can get there late. We're not really a Flash Freeze deck. We're not aggressive enough to justify it. Bleh. I'm gonna miss. Yeah, don't have really any synergies with Sporefolk other than occasionally we'll hit a target to Haunting Scream back. Eh. What are we gonna get? Amethyst Acolyte? Sure. Nothing crazy exciting. I guess Stone Scar Max, but it's still playing a 1/2 for 2. Of course, playing any of these other cards isn't really where we want to be either. Take the dagger on the off chance we somehow get a Stormcaller. Ooh, Lumen Defender. We have this Legion Banner and a Seek Power. That makes this very enticing. We're passing up on a Direwood Rampager, which we're not going to play. Sure, who knows, maybe get one more piece of fixing. Although I don't think Calibre Stranger's quite the fixing I want. I don't mind playing a Jotun Warrior here just for some beef on the ground to gum it up while we beat down in the skies. Although if I'm splashing time for Lumen Defender, Unlock Potential becomes more interesting. It makes these Eastwind Heralds a lot more appealing, them becoming 2 for big game. Same with these other flyers. You know what? Let's take that. Hey, okay. Well, this is not what I would call a good deck. This is not what I was hoping my first ever recorded draft would end up looking like, but hey, can't always be in control of such things. I think we ended up okay. Sure, our Combre deck probably would have been better. What I'm doing now is just trimming down some picks, figuring out, taking out the splash cards, seeing what our deck will look like, taking out lots of mediocre cards. I don't want to play 2 Sabotages, maybe I'll play 1. Getting an idea of like how many playables we actually have. I don't mind playing the first Herald Song. I don't really want to play 2 Gruons. I don't know if this Acolyte's better than a Gruon, but it gives our Haunting Scream some other use other than hitting Magus. I don't know if we even want to play 2 Haunting Screams. We really didn't end up with any good targets. Yeah, wow. Owning Screams just don't do anything. Stone Scar Magus. Sleeve. I don't want to jump through a bunch of hoops to give a creature -2 neg. Alright, so yeah, we're certainly lacking playables to start. So let's see what we've got here. So we've got these unlock potentials. It's limited potential splash. I have a second Gruon if we need it. A Blackguard sidearm. I could end up playing it and just putting it on a Herald and hoping it gets there. Same with putting it on the Lethroy Ranger to help push through. Jam that back in there. Puts me at a few more weapons than okay. Gives us a combust, not the biggest fan. Let's see, right now this would be 18 power. I don't know why these are out of order. They are. So the question is, does adding an Elysian the time sweat stack better? Get to play a Lumen Defender and 2 potential. Probably end up just playing 1 unlock potential. And even then, don't see how that's very good. So I think if we just play 18 power, sure, there might be sometimes where we draw a little too much, but we've got Herald Song to discard some of it and smooth out some draws. And we've got Wisdom of the Elders to help smooth out draws as well. So we just know we're always going to curve out and kind of get things. Not going to be great, but hey, nothing wrong with 2 drops backed up by some okay 4 drops and some room spell. Yeah. I think that's what we're looking at here. Really don't want a second. Just gonna hope our flyers get the job done. There's certainly an argument to trying to get this unlock potential and Lumen Defender in. Like we have is both a Seek Power and 1 banner for a Legion. But I don't think it's adding enough extra oomph to our deck to justify it. I could also suppose take out the Alchemical Blast to make room for it. But I really don't mind just playing Alchemical Blast. It's going to kill a flyer a lot of the time. Yeah, let's go with this. And hey, we can always change our build later if we don't like how it's feeling. If we find the games are getting stalled out and there will be opportunities to play unlock potential, we'll splash in. As it stands, it's going to run it like this. Going to add 8 and 8. It's to 45, so 17 power plus 1 Seek Power plus an on-color Stranger. So we're going to be able to cast our stuff, no problem. That's where we want to be. That's there's in a 7-game series, you be able to know you're casting your cards every game. So we're going to get this run started, and I'll see you on the flip side. Thanks all for tuning in. This is Sir Rhino, and I'll see you in match 1 momentarily.